The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between three bright stars. It was bigger than most cities and served as the Galactic Military Academy. Ships from 17 different worlds docked at its ports every day, bringing young soldiers to learn the art of war. Commander Zethkar walked through the main hall on his four powerful arms. His gray skin reflected the soft blue lights overhead. As a Vraxian, he stood nearly 8 feet tall and commanded respect from every species in the galaxy. He had been running the Academy's tactical division for 23 years. Today was special. 3 new cadets from a small blue planet called Earth were arriving. Humans, they called themselves. Zethkar had heard stories about them. They had only joined the Galactic Alliance 5 years ago, barely after discovering faster-than-light travel. Most species needed centuries to develop such technology. Commander, called Lieutenant Veltar, a snake-like Sethran with scales that changed color when she spoke. The human transport has docked at Bay 7. Zethkar nodded and made his way to the docking area. He was curious about these humans. Their planet had been at war with itself for most of its history. Strange, he thought. Most civilized species learn to live in peace before reaching the stars. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. 3 young humans stepped out, looking around with wide eyes. The first was a male with dark hair and brown skin. He carried himself like a soldier despite his young age. The second was a female with blonde hair tied back in a practical style. She immediately began studying the station's architecture. The hour. Third was another male, red-haired and freckled, who seemed to be mentally calculating everything he saw. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," Zethkar said in the common galactic language. "I am Commander Zethkar. You must be the human cadets." The dark-haired male stepped forward and saluted. "Jake Martinez, sir. This is Katie Bell and Ryan Clark. We're honored to be here." Zethkar was impressed by their manners. Many young aliens were either too nervous or too arrogant when they first arrived. These humans seemed calm and respectful. "Follow me," he said. "I will show you to your quarters and explain our training programs." As they walked through the station's corridors, other cadets stopped to stare. The humans were smaller than most species, but moved with quick, efficient steps. A group of tall, blue-skinned Zenthari cadets whispered among themselves. The Zenthari were known for their pride and military tradition. They clearly did not think much of the newcomers. "Your species is quite young in galactic terms," Zethkar explained as they walked. "Most of our cadets come from civilizations that have been spacefaring for thousands of years. What made Earth want to join our military academy so quickly?" Katie Bell spoke up. "We want to learn, sir. Our planet has seen a lot of conflict. We understand that war is terrible, but we also know that sometimes you have to fight to protect what matters." "Interesting perspective," Zethkar replied. "Most species join the academy to gain prestige or advance their careers. The humans seem to have different motivations." They reached the cadet quarters, simple but comfortable rooms with sleeping areas and study spaces. The humans would share this section with cadets from 3 other species. Zethkar hoped there would be no conflicts, but he had seen problems before when different species lived together. "Tomorrow you will begin with basic tactical simulations," he explained. "We use advanced computer programs to recreate famous battles from galactic history. You will learn strategy, resource management, and leadership skills." Ryan Clark raised his hand. "What kind of battles, sir?" "All kinds. Space combat, planetary invasions, defensive operations. We have one simulation in particular that every cadet attempts. It is based on the siege of Korthak Prime. one of the most challenging tactical scenarios ever recorded. Has anyone ever won it? Jake asked. Zethkar's four arms moved in what humans would recognize as a shrug. The simulation is not designed to be won. It teaches the important lesson that sometimes retreat is the only option. The goal is to survive as long as possible while preserving your forces. The three humans exchanged glances. Zethkar noticed the look but did not understand its meaning. The current record is held by Cadet Group 7 from the Zenthari Empire, he continued. They managed to hold out for 96 hours before accepting defeat. Most groups last 12 to 24 hours. What makes it so difficult? Katie asked. You are defending an orbital platform with limited resources against a massive enemy fleet. The odds are impossible. Every military academy in the galaxy uses this simulation to teach strategic thinking under pressure. That evening, the humans ate in the main cafeteria with cadets from other worlds. The food was designed to be safe for all species, though it tasted bland to most. The humans seemed to enjoy it, or at least they did not complain. A group of Zenthari cadets approached their table. The leader, a tall female with intricate blue markings on her skin, looked down at the humans with obvious disdain. So you are the famous humans, she said. I am Cadet Prime Zaranel. I hear your species barely knows how to build starships. Jake remained calm. We're here to learn. Maybe you could teach us something. The Zenthari laughed. Perhaps, though I doubt you will last long in the advanced simulations. The siege of Korthak Prime will likely be over in minutes for you. We'll do our best, Katie replied politely. After the Zenthari left, Ryan shook his head. Friendly bunch. They're not wrong, though, Jake said quietly. We are the new kids here. Every other species has been doing this for centuries. Maybe that's an advantage, Katie suggested. Fresh perspective. The next morning, Commander Zethkar led them to the simulation center. The room was filled with advanced holographic projectors and neural interface equipment. Other cadet groups were already running various tactical scenarios. Today, you will start with basic combat simulations, Zethkar explained. Simple ship-to-ship battles to test your coordination and decision-making skills. The humans performed well in the basic tests. They communicated clearly, adapted quickly to new information, and showed good instincts for three-dimensional space combat. Zethkar was pleased but not surprised. Earth's military had experience with complex operations, even if they were limited to one planet. As the day ended, Zethkar made notes in his report. The human cadets showed promise. They were eager to learn, respectful of authority, and worked well as a team. But tomorrow they would face real challenges. The advanced simulations would test them in ways their primitive planet could never have prepared them for. He looked forward to seeing how they would handle the siege of Korthak Prime. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived at Nexus Prime. Jake, Katie, and Ryan had completed the basic training programs and impressed their instructors with quick learning and teamwork. Today, Commander Zethkar would introduce them to the Academy's most famous challenge. The simulation chamber was larger than the others, with more advanced equipment and viewing areas for observers. Several cadet groups had gathered to watch. Word had spread that the humans would attempt the siege of Korthak Prime simulation. This scenario is based on actual events from 200 years ago. Zethkar began, his four arms gesturing toward the holographic display that materialized in the center of the room. The orbital defense platform of Korthak Prime was attacked by an enemy fleet of overwhelming size. The display showed a detailed model of the space station. It was roughly cylindrical, about 2 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. Solar. Panels and communication arrays extended from its sides like mechanical wings. Docking bays, weapon systems, and shield generators were clearly marked. The defending force consisted of only 300 personnel. Zethkar continued. They faced an invasion fleet of over 2,000 ships carrying 50,000 enemy soldiers. The defenders had limited ammunition, aging equipment, and no hope of reinforcement. Katie studied the display carefully. What were they defending? Why was this station so important? Korthak Prime controlled the only hyperspace route between the Outer Rim territories and the core worlds. If it fell, the enemy could cut off supplies to 7 star systems and threaten the capital itself. Ryan pointed to various sections of the station. What kind of weapons did they have? Standard defensive systems, plasma cannons, missile launchers, and energy shields. The station also had mining equipment for asteroid processing and a small manufacturing facility. Zethkar's expression grew serious. But all of this was designed for normal operations, not military combat. Jake frowned as he examined the tactical display. How long did the real defenders hold out? 4 days. They inflicted heavy casualties on the attackers, but were eventually overwhelmed. Their sacrifice bought time for a relief fleet to arrive and drive off the invaders. The holographic display changed to show wave after wave of enemy ships approaching the station. The attacking force was massive, with sleek fighters, heavy cruisers, and enormous transport vessels carrying ground troops. Every cadet group attempts this simulation, Zethkar explained. It teaches important lessons about resource management, tactical decision-making, and the concept of honorable defeat. Sometimes a commander must know when to surrender to save lives. In the observation area, the Zenthari cadets watched with amusement. Zaranel whispered to her companions, "I give them 1 hour before they request permission to surrender." Zethkar activated the simulation controls. Your goal is to defend the station for as long as possible while preserving civilian lives and critical infrastructure. The enemy will attack in waves, growing stronger each time. You have complete command, authority over all station systems and personnel. The humans stepped into the neural interface pods. The technology was advanced beyond anything on Earth, allowing their minds to directly control the simulation. Jake felt the strange sensation as his consciousness expanded to encompass the entire station. He could sense every corridor, every weapon system, every person under his command. Katie took control of the station's sensors and communication systems. Through her enhanced awareness, she could see the approaching enemy fleet like a dark cloud blotting out the stars. There were so many ships that she could not count them all. Ryan connected to the engineering systems. He could feel the station's power flowing through its various systems like blood through veins. The reactor was operating at normal capacity, but he could see dozens of ways to modify its output for different purposes. Enemy fleet detected at maximum sensor range, Katie reported, falling naturally into the role of communications officer. Time to contact, approximately 30 minutes. All defensive systems online, Ryan added. Shields at full power, weapons charged and ready. Jake reviewed the tactical situation. The station had 12 major weapon systems, 8 plasma cannon, batteries, and 4 missile launchers. The shields could absorb significant damage but would eventually fail under sustained attack. 300 simulated personnel waited for his orders. Incoming transmission from the enemy fleet, Katie announced. Put it through, Jake decided. A holographic figure appeared in the command center. It was humanoid but clearly alien, with gray skin and large black eyes. When it spoke, Its voice was cold and emotionless. "Defenders of Korthak Prime, you are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and your lives will be spared. Resist, and you will all die." Jake looked at his teammates. They had discussed this moment during their preparation. Every other cadet group had tried to negotiate or delay the enemy. None had simply refused. "This is Commander Martinez of Korthak Prime," Jake replied. "We reject your terms. This station will not fall while we defend it." The alien's expression did not change. "Then you have chosen death. We attack in 10 minutes. The transmission ended. In the observation area, the watching cadets murmured among themselves. The humans had just guaranteed a fight to the end. First, "Wave incoming," Katie reported. 60 fighters and 12 cruisers. "Target the cruisers first," Jake ordered. "Ryan, can you boost power to the main guns?" "Already on it," Ryan replied. His consciousness dove deep into the station's engineering systems. He began rerouting power from non-essential systems to the weapons array. Plasma cannons now operating at 120% capacity. The first enemy ships came within range. The station's weapons opened fire, brilliant beams of energy reaching across space to strike the attacking vessels. The plasma cannons, supercharged by Ryan's modifications, punched through enemy shields with devastating effect. "Direct hits on 4 cruisers," Katie called out. 2 destroyed, 2 heavily damaged. But the enemy fighters were faster and harder to hit. They swarmed around the station like angry insects, firing rapid pulses at the shields. Each hit weakened the defensive barrier slightly. "Shield strength down to 90%, Ryan reported. "At this rate, they'll fail in about 2 hours. Jake studied the tactical display. This was exactly what every other cadet group had experienced. The station's weapons were effective, but there were simply too many enemies. Each wave would be larger than the last until the defenders were overwhelmed. But as he watched the enemy attack pattern, Jake began to notice something strange. The attacking ships followed very predictable routes. They approached from specific angles, used standard formations, and attacked in organized waves with set intervals between them. "Katie, are you seeing this?" he asked. "Look at their approach vectors." Katie focused her enhanced senses on the enemy fleet. After a moment, she understood what Jake had noticed. "They're following textbook tactics, everything by the book. And, Ryan," Jake continued, "what would happen if we deliberately overloaded the shield generators?" Ryan's consciousness examined the station's defensive systems more carefully. A slow smile spread across his face in the real world, though his mind remained focused on the simulation. "It would create a massive electromagnetic pulse," he said. "Might knock out our own systems, but it would definitely disrupt anything nearby." In the observation area, Commander Zethkar watched with growing interest. The humans were not following standard defensive doctrine. They seemed to be planning something unconventional. "Second wave approaching," Katie announced. 120 ships this time. "Perfect," Jake said. "Let them get closer. Ryan, prepare to overload the shields on my command." The watching alien cadets could not believe what they were hearing. The humans seemed to be planning to disable their own defenses. The third wave of enemy ships moved carefully toward Korthak Prime. Their formation was spread wide, with ships maintaining greater distances to avoid another electromagnetic pulse. The enemy AI had learned from the previous disaster and was adapting its tactics. Jake watched the approaching vessels through the station's repaired sensors. "They're being smart now. No tight formations, varied approach vectors. They've figured out we're not playing by the usual rules." "Good thing we're not done surprising them," Katie replied. She had been working on modifications to the communication array while Ryan prepared his gravity trap systems. The enemy ships began their assault with long-range weapons fire, staying well outside the range of any possible electromagnetic pulse. Energy beams struck the station's hull directly, since the shields were still offline from the previous overload. "Hull breaches in sections 4 and 7, reported one of the simulated crew members. "We're losing atmosphere." "Seal those sections," Jake ordered. "Ryan, how long until the gravity systems are ready?" "2 more minutes," Ryan replied, his consciousness deep in the station's engineering systems. "But I need them to commit to a boarding action first." The enemy assault continued, methodically targeting the station's remaining weapon systems. Without shields, the plasma cannons were vulnerable to direct attack. One by one, they were destroyed by precise enemy fire. In the observation area, the alien cadets began to relax. "Finally," muttered Zaranel, "they are being defeated properly." But Commander Zethkar noticed something the cadets missed. The humans were not fighting back. They were letting their weapons be destroyed without even trying to protect them. Last, "Plasma cannon destroyed," Katie reported. "All conventional weapons are offline." "Perfect," Jake said, and his calm tone confused everyone watching. "Now they'll move to Phase 2. As predicted, the enemy ships moved closer to the station. With the defensive weapons eliminated, they felt safe to approach for boarding actions. Transport vessels moved toward the docking bays while fighters provided cover. "Enemy boarding shuttles approaching docking bays 1 through 6, Katie announced. 20 shuttles, approximately 40 soldiers each." "Let them dock," Jake ordered. Ryan smiled as he activated his modified gravity systems. The approaching shuttles entered the docking bays normally, their pilots expecting standard resistance from the station's security forces. Instead, they found something no military manual had ever described. The gravity in docking bay 1 suddenly increased to 10 times normal strength. The enemy soldiers inside the shuttle were crushed against the floor, unable to move or even breathe properly. In docking bay 2, gravity reversed entirely, slamming everything against the ceiling with bone-breaking force. "What's happening to the boarding parties?" demanded the enemy fleet commander over the communication channel. Katie had intercepted their communications frequency. She listened as confused reports came in from the shuttle pilots. "Sir, we can't get out of the shuttles. Something's wrong with gravity. The men can't move." "Bay 3 is experiencing sideways gravity," she reported to Jake with amusement. "The soldiers are all stuck to the wall." Ryan was having fun with his gravity control. "Bay 4 has rotating gravity. They're spinning like clothes in a washing machine." The enemy AI was completely unprepared for this tactic. Boarding actions were supposed to follow established procedures: dock, deploy troops, fight through corridors, capture key areas. The possibility that gravity itself could be weaponized had never been programmed into its tactical database. "Sir," Katie said, "I'm ready with the directional electromagnetic pulse." "Do it," Jake ordered. Katie activated her modified communication array. Instead of broadcasting in all directions like the shield overload, this pulse was focused like a laser beam. It struck a cluster of enemy cruisers that were moving in to support the failed boarding action. The targeted ships went dark immediately. Their systems crashed, their weapons went offline, and their engines died. They drifted helplessly in space, just like the ships from the second wave. "This is impossible," said Zaranel in the observation area. "The simulation is malfunctioning." But Commander Zethkar checked the system diagnostics. Everything was working perfectly. The humans were simply using the station systems in ways that had never been attempted before. "Sir," came a voice from the simulated station crew. "The enemy is requesting permission to negotiate." Jake considered this. In every previous simulation, this was the point where cadet groups would accept surrender terms or negotiate a ceasefire. The enemy had suffered massive losses, the station was heavily damaged, and continuing the fight seemed pointless. Open a channel, he decided. The same alien commander from before appeared on the holographic display. This time he looked frustrated and confused. "Human commander, your tactics are highly irregular. We are prepared to discuss terms for your surrender." "I don't think you understand the situation," Jake replied calmly. "You're the ones who should be considering surrender." The alien's large black eyes widened. "You have no weapons, no shields, and your station is severely damaged. How can you threaten us?" "Watch and learn," Jake said, then nodded to Ryan. Ryan had been preparing his most ambitious modification yet. The station's main reactor was designed to provide power for normal operations, but it could be pushed far beyond those limits for short periods. He began routing massive amounts of energy to systems that were never meant to handle such power. The asteroid mining equipment came online with 10 times its normal energy output. The gravity generators throughout the station began working in coordinated patterns. Even the lights and life support systems were modified to serve Ryan's plan. "Katie, target the main enemy fleet," Jake ordered. Katie used the enhanced sensor array to lock onto the largest concentration of enemy ships. There were over 50 vessels clustered together, waiting to see the results of the boarding action. "What are you planning to do?" the enemy commander demanded. "Something you're tactical. Computers never considered," Jake replied. "We're going to turn this entire station into a weapon." Ryan activated his masterpiece. The station's reactor output spiked to dangerous levels, feeding power to every system he had modified. The mining equipment began cutting through the station's own hull in carefully calculated patterns. The gravity generators created massive distortions in space around the station. Even the air recycling systems were pumping out clouds of metallic particles that would interfere with enemy sensors. "Are they destroying their own station?" gasped a Sethran cadet in the observation area. That was exactly what they were doing, but not randomly. Ryan had calculated everything perfectly. As the mining equipment cut through specific support structures, entire sections of the station began to break away. But instead of flying off into space, the modified gravity generators captured these massive chunks of metal and hurled them toward the enemy fleet. Pieces of Korthak Prime, each weighing thousands of tons and moving at incredible speed, slammed into the clustered enemy ships. The vessels, designed to withstand energy weapons and missiles, were completely unprepared for kinetic impacts from massive debris. "Direct hits on multiple targets," Katie reported with satisfaction. 15 ships destroyed, 20 more severely damaged. The enemy fleet scattered in panic, but Jake was not finished. "Ryan, Phase 2. Ryan had saved the best for last. The station's reactor core itself could be ejected in an emergency. It was a safety feature designed to prevent catastrophic explosions, but when ejected with the power of modified gravity generators behind it, the reactor core became the ultimate kinetic weapon. The massive sphere of metal and energy shot toward the heart of the enemy fleet like a cannonball fired from a giant cannon. It struck the enemy flagship directly, passing completely through the vessel and continuing on to destroy 2 more ships behind it. "Fleet command ship destroyed," Katie announced. "Enemy formation is in complete disarray. The remaining enemy." Ships were in full retreat, but Jake had one more surprise. The reactor core explosion had created a massive electromagnetic pulse that disabled every enemy vessel within a 20-kilometer radius. In the observation area, complete silence reigned. The alien cadets stared at the tactical display in shock. The humans had not just survived the siege of Korthak Prime. They had turned it into a complete victory, destroying or disabling the entire enemy fleet. Commander Zethkar checked his chronometer. Elapsed time, 20 minutes and 12 seconds. The simulation ended, and the neural interface pods opened. Jake, Katie, and Ryan stepped out, looking calm and satisfied. Around them, the holographic displays showed the results of their unconventional tactics, total victory at minimal cost. "How?" whispered Zaranel. "How is this possible?" Jake looked at the assembled alien cadets and shrugged. "We didn't try to fight their kind of war. We fought our kind of war." The second wave of enemy ships approached Korthak Prime in perfect formation. Jake watched them through the tactical display, counting ships and analyzing their pattern. 120 vessels moved like pieces on a chessboard following rules that had been written in military academies across the galaxy. "They're doing exactly what I expected," Jake said to his teammates. "Look at the spacing between their ships. Look at how they approach the station. It's all standard procedure." Katie understood immediately. During their weeks at the academy, they had studied galactic military doctrine extensively. Every species followed similar principles: maintain formation, preserve resources, minimize casualties. It was logical, efficient, and completely predictable. "They think we'll respond the same way every other defender has," she realized. "Fight until our weapons are destroyed, shields are down, then surrender to save lives." Ryan was deep in the station's engineering systems, seeing possibilities that the original designers had never intended. "The mining equipment in Section 7 isn't connected to the weapons grid, but it could be. Those plasma cutters are designed to slice through asteroids. What would they do to a ship's hull?" "The gravity generators in the docking bays," Katie added, her mind racing with ideas. "They're designed to create standard Earth normal gravity, but what if we reversed them? Or overloaded them?" Jake felt something he had never experienced in any of the basic simulations. Instead of feeling trapped by the scenario's limitations, he felt liberated by them. Every limitation was actually a tool they could use in unexpected ways. "The simulation expects us to think like soldiers," he said. "But we're not just soldiers. We're humans. We've been fighting impossible odds our entire history." In the observation area, Commander Zethkar leaned forward. The humans were discussing their strategy openly, and what he heard troubled him. They seemed to be planning something that violated every principle of civilized warfare. The enemy ships came within range and opened fire. This wave was larger and more coordinated than the first. Energy beams struck the station's shields from multiple angles, while fighters swooped in to target specific weapon systems. Shield strength dropping. "Fast," Ryan reported. 60% and falling. "Let them get closer," Jake ordered. "We need them all within the pulse radius." The alien cadets in the viewing area exchanged glances. Cadet Prime Zaranel shook her head in disgust. "They are going to get everyone killed in the first hour. This is what happens when primitives attempt military strategy." But Zethkar was beginning to understand. The humans were not following any tactical doctrine he recognized. They seemed to be making up their strategy as they went along, adapting to each moment without regard for established procedures. 40% shields, Ryan announced. "They're getting ready for the next phase of attack." Katie's sensors showed. the enemy formation tightening around the station. They were moving into position for a concentrated assault on the main defensive systems. It was the standard approach, designed to systematically eliminate the station's ability to fight back. "Now," Jake said quietly. Ryan's consciousness plunged deep into the shield generator systems. Instead of maintaining the careful balance that kept the defensive barrier stable, he began pushing power levels far beyond safe limits. Warning alarms started blaring throughout the station as systems strained beyond their design parameters. "Ryan, what are you doing?" came a voice from the simulated crew. "The generators are overloading." "Trust me," Ryan replied, his hands dancing, over controls that existed only in his enhanced awareness. "Katie, kill all non-essential electronics in 10 seconds. Katie's fingers flew over the communication systems, shutting down everything except critical life support and the most basic navigation systems. The station's lights dimmed as power was redirected to the failing shield generators. 5 seconds. Ryan counted down. 4, 3, 2... The shield generators exploded. Not literally, of course, but the electromagnetic pulse they created was massive. It rippled outward from the station like an invisible wave, striking every ship within a 5-kilometer radius. The enemy vessels, their systems designed for efficiency rather than resilience, went dark one by one. "What just happened?" demanded Zara Nell from the observation area. On the tactical display, nearly 80 enemy ships drifted helplessly in space. Their weapons were offline, their engines dead, their communications silenced. The remaining 40 ships of the second wave, caught at the edge of the pulse, struggled with damaged systems and confused crews. "Phase 1 complete," Jake announced calmly. "Katie, can you get communications back online?" "Working on it," she replied. The electromagnetic pulse had damaged some of their own systems, but Katie had been ready for that. She began rerouting communications through backup systems that she had isolated before the pulse. "We'll have basic sensors and comms in about 2 minutes. Ryan was already working on the next part of their plan. "The mining equipment is coming online now. I'm connecting it to the tactical grid. The plasma cutters designed for asteroid mining were never meant to be weapons, but they were incredibly powerful. Ryan began extending them from the station's hull, turning them toward the disabled enemy ships floating nearby. "Jake," Katie said urgently, "I'm picking up communication attempts from the disabled ships. They're requesting assistance." "Ignore them for now," Jake replied. "Ryan, target the cruisers first. We need to eliminate their heavy weapons before they can recover." The plasma cutters fired, not the quick bursts used for asteroid processing, but sustained beams that could cut through the hull of a starship in seconds. The disabled enemy cruisers, unable to maneuver or raise shields, were destroyed one by one. Commander Zethkar stood up in the observation area. "This is impossible. The simulation is not designed to allow this kind of tactic." But the simulation continued to run. The enemy AI, programmed to respond to conventional tactics, struggled to adapt to what the humans were doing. It sent the remaining ships of the second wave to attack, but they were disorganized and confused by the loss of so many vessels. "Third wave incoming," Katie reported. "But it's smaller than expected. Only 90 ships. The AI is adapting," Jake realized. "It's being more cautious." "Good," Ryan said. "That gives us time to prepare the next surprise." He turned his attention to the station's gravity generators. These systems created artificial gravity throughout the station's corridors and living areas, but Ryan was modifying them for a different purpose entirely. "I'm creating gravity wells in the approach corridors," he explained. Any ship that tries to dock with us is going to get a very unpleasant surprise. Katie was working on her own project. The communication array can be overloaded to create another electromagnetic pulse, but it will be directional this time. We can target specific areas of space. Jake studied the tactical situation. They had eliminated over half of the second wave and learned valuable information about how the enemy AI operated. But the real test was coming. The third wave would be more careful, more prepared for unconventional tactics. They're going to try boarding actions next, he predicted. Standard doctrine after defensive systems are compromised. Let them come, Ryan said grimly. I've got a few more tricks ready. In the observation area, the alien cadets watched in stunned silence. The humans had just accomplished something that should have been impossible. They had not only survived the second wave, they had turned it into a victory. How are they doing this? Whispered a young Sethran cadet. Zethkar was beginning to understand. They are not thinking like soldiers, he said slowly. They are thinking like survivors. Every system on that station is a potential weapon to them. Every limitation is a challenge to overcome. The third wave of enemy ships approached more cautiously. Their formations spread out to avoid another electromagnetic pulse. But Jake and his team were already 3 steps ahead, preparing tactics that no galactic military academy had ever imagined. The siege of Korthak Prime was about to become something entirely different from what its creators had intended. The simulation chamber fell silent as the holographic displays faded away. Jake, Katie, and Ryan stood beside their neural interface pods, looking around at the stunned faces of their alien classmates. The tactical readout still showed the impossible. Result: total victory in 20 minutes and 12 seconds. Commander Zethkar was the first to speak. "Run the simulation again." "Sir?" asked Lieutenant Veltar, her scales shifting to a confused purple color. "Run it again. There must be an error in the program." The humans exchanged glances. Jake stepped forward. "Commander, with respect, there's no error. We simply approached the problem differently." Zethkar's 4 arms moved in agitation. "What you did should not be possible. The Siege of Korthak Prime scenario has been tested for over a century. The parameters are fixed. The enemy strength is overwhelming. Victory is not achievable." "Maybe that's the problem," Katie said quietly. "Everyone who attempts this simulation believes victory is impossible, so they plan for defeat instead of planning for victory." In the observation area, Cadet Prime Zaranel stood up angrily. "They cheated somehow. No primitive species could accomplish what we have failed to do for generations." "How did we cheat?" Ryan asked calmly. "We used only the systems available on the station. We followed all the rules of the simulation. We just used them creatively." Zethkar began reviewing the simulation data. Every action the humans had taken was technically within the parameters of the scenario. They had not broken any rules or used any resources that were not available to previous cadet groups. "The electromagnetic pulse from overloading the shields," he said slowly. "No one has ever tried that before. Because everyone treats the shields as something to preserve," Jake explained. "We treated them as ammunition to be expended." "The gravity manipulation in the docking bays," Zethkar continued. "The mining equipment used as weapons. The reactor core as a kinetic projectile." He looked up at the humans with something approaching awe. "How did you think of these tactics?" Katie smiled. "Our planet has been at war with itself for thousands of years. We've learned to use everything as a weapon when we need to." Humans don't surrender easily. But the tactical principles, protested a Zenthari cadet. You violated every established doctrine of space warfare. Exactly, Ryan said. That's why it worked. The enemy AI was programmed to counter conventional tactics. When we did something unconventional, it couldn't adapt fast enough. Commander Zethkar realized the implications of what he had witnessed. Show me the energy expenditure analysis. Lieutenant Veltar brought up the relevant data. Sir, the humans used 3 times more energy than any previous attempt. They overloaded systems far beyond safe operating parameters. And the casualty projections? 0 friendly casualties, sir. They evacuated endangered sections before deliberately damaging them. Zethkar studied the data more carefully. The humans had not won through superior firepower or technological advantage. They had won through creative thinking and a willingness to take risks that other species would never consider. Run the simulation one more time, he ordered. But this time, modify the enemy AI to counter the tactics they used. The simulation reloaded, and the humans returned to their neural interface pods. This time, the enemy forces were prepared for electromagnetic pulses, gravity manipulation, and kinetic attacks from station debris. The humans adapted immediately. Instead of overloading the shields for an electromagnetic pulse, Katie used the communication array to broadcast false signals that confused the enemy coordination systems. Ryan modified the life support systems to flood certain areas with anesthetic gas, disabling boarding parties without harming them. Jake used the station's construction robots to build makeshift weapons from spare parts. When the enemy adapted to these new tactics, the humans simply invented different ones. They turned the waste recycling system into a projectile launcher. They used the medical scanners to identify weaknesses in enemy ship designs. They even modified the food processors to create chemical compounds that could eat through enemy hull. Plating. Second simulation complete, announced Lieutenant Veltar. Victory achieved in 18 minutes and 37 seconds. The alien cadets were no longer dismissive. They were frightened. The humans had not just won once through luck or trickery, they had won again, even faster, against an enemy that was prepared for their previous tactics. One more time, Zethkar said grimly. Maximum difficulty. The enemy AI will have complete knowledge of all human tactics used in previous attempts. The third simulation was a nightmare scenario. The enemy forces were not only larger and more powerful, but they actively countered every strategy the humans had used before. Electromagnetic pulses were shielded against. Gravity manipulation was neutralized. Kinetic attacks were anticipated and avoided. Jake, Katie, and Ryan entered the simulation, knowing they faced an enemy that was specifically designed to defeat them. For the first time since arriving at the academy, they felt genuinely challenged. This is different, Katie reported as the enemy fleet approached. They're maintaining distance using rotating formations, and their ships have enhanced shielding. The boarding shuttles are using magnetic clamps instead of docking, Ryan added. My gravity tricks won't work on them. Jake studied the tactical situation. Everything they had done before was now useless. The enemy had learned to counter their unconventional tactics, but that meant they were no longer facing an enemy following standard galactic military doctrine. They were facing an enemy that was specifically adapted to fight humans. Good, Jake said, and his teammates understood immediately. They've given up their own advantages to counter ours, Katie realized. Which means they're playing our game. Now, Ryan added with a grin, the humans abandoned all their previous tactics and started completely fresh. Instead of using the station's systems as weapons, they used them as decoys. They made false electromagnetic pulses that did nothing but convince the enemy to activate expensive countermeasures. They created fake gravity distortions that caused enemy ships to waste energy on unnecessary maneuvers. While the enemy fleet focused on countering threats that did not exist, the humans used simpler, more direct tactics. They launched the station's maintenance robots as guided missiles. They fired the emergency escape pods like torpedoes. They even used the station's garbage disposal system to create a cloud of debris that interfered with enemy sensors. "The enemy is adapting to our false signals," Katie reported. "Let them," Jake replied. "Ryan, are you ready with the final surprise?" Ryan had been working on something new while the enemy focused on countering their previous tactics. "The station's water recycling system can be turned into a massive steam generator. If I vent it all at once, it will create a cloud of superheated vapor around the entire station." "Do it!" Jake ordered. The effect was spectacular. A huge cloud of steam erupted from every part of the station, creating a barrier that was invisible to enemy sensors and deadly to any ship that tried to fly through it. The enemy fleet, already committed to their attack patterns, could not avoid the expanding cloud. Ships that entered the steam cloud found their hull plating heated to dangerous levels within seconds. Their sensors were completely blinded. Their weapon systems overheated and shut down. The entire enemy formation was scattered and confused. "Now," Jake said quietly, "the humans activated their real plan. While the enemy was blind and scattered, they launched everything they had left. Escape pods filled with mining explosives, maintenance robots programmed to attach to enemy hulls, even pieces of furniture from the station's living areas. Third, simulation complete," announced Lieutenant Veltar in a voice filled with disbelief. "Victory achieved in 17 minutes and 51 seconds. Commander Zethkar stood in the observation area, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. "It is not possible. No force can defeat the siege of Korthak Prime 3 times in a row." "Just did," Jake said simply. "But how?" demanded Zaranel. "You are a primitive species. You have been in space for less than a decade. How can you surpass civilizations that have studied warfare for millennia?" Katie considered the question seriously. "Maybe that's exactly why we can do it. You've all been studying the same tactics, the same strategies, the same principles for thousands of years. You think inside the same patterns. We learned to fight on a planet where resources are limited and enemies are creative," Ryan added. "We had to learn to improvise or we would have died out as a species." Jake looked around the room at the stunned alien cadets. "You asked how we beat an impossible scenario. The answer is simple. We refused to accept that it was impossible." The room remained silent for a long moment. Then Commander Zethkar began to laugh, a strange rumbling sound that echoed through the chamber. "Do you know what you have done?" he asked the humans. "You have invalidated a century of military doctrine. You have proven that everything we teach about tactical impossibility is wrong." He paused, his expression growing serious. "And you have shown us that humanity may be the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Word of the humans' impossible victories spread through Nexus Prime like wildfire. Within hours, cadets from every species had heard about the 3 consecutive wins against the siege of Korthak Prime simulation. Faculty members who had been teaching tactical doctrine for decades requested copies of the simulation recordings. Even senior commanders from across the galaxy began sending encrypted messages asking for details. Commander Zethkar found himself in an unprecedented situation. His neural interface with the Academy's main computer showed dozens of priority communications waiting for his attention. The Zenthari High Command wanted a full tactical analysis. The Vraxian Strategic Institute demanded access to all simulation data. Even the mysterious Nethics Collective, who rarely communicated with other species, had sent a formal inquiry. "Sir," Lieutenant Veltar reported, her scales shifting through nervous color patterns, "we have 17 more cadet groups requesting to attempt the modified simulation." "Denied," Zethkar replied immediately. "Until we understand exactly what happened, no other groups will attempt this scenario." In the cadet quarters, Jake, Katie, and Ryan found themselves at the center of a storm of attention they had never wanted. Alien students who had barely acknowledged their existence before now followed them through the corridors, asking endless questions about human military history and tactical philosophy. "It's getting ridiculous," Katie complained as they sat in the cafeteria. A group of young Sethran cadets was openly staring at them from across the room. "I can't even eat without someone wanting to know how we think outside conventional parameters." Ryan poked at his food, which had been specially prepared by the kitchen staff, as a gesture of respect. "At least they're being nice about it. That Zenthari group still looks like they want to challenge us to individual combat." Jake glanced over at Cadet Prime Zara Nell's table. The proud, blue-skinned aliens were engaged in heated discussion, occasionally throwing hostile looks toward the humans. "They'll get over it. Losing isn't the end of the world." "Easy for you to say," Katie replied. "You're not the ones whose entire military tradition just got proven obsolete." What none of them realized was that the implications of their victory were spreading far beyond the academy. On the Zenthari homeworld, military strategists were conducting emergency reviews of their naval doctrine. Vraxian war colleges were questioning tactics that had been successful for thousands of years. The very foundations of galactic military science were being shaken. Commander Zethkar was in his office reviewing the simulation data for the 100th time when his communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. The holographic display showed Admiral Kethvar, the Vraxian Supreme Naval Commander, and one of the most respected military minds in the galaxy. "Zethkar," the Admiral said without preamble, "I need you to explain to me how 3 barely trained humans accomplished something that our finest strategists have declared impossible." "Admiral, I have been analyzing their methods extensively," Zethkar replied. "The humans approach the scenario with fundamentally different assumptions about what constitutes acceptable risk and resource expenditure. Show me." Zethkar activated a detailed replay of the first simulation. "Observe here, when they deliberately overload their shield generators to create an electromagnetic pulse. No galactic military doctrine would ever recommend destroying your own defensive systems. It's suicide," Admiral Kethvar agreed, unless you view the shields not as protection to be preserved, but as ammunition to be expended for maximum effect," Zethkar finished. "The humans consistently treated every system on the station as expendable if it could be used to damage the enemy." The Admiral watched in fascination as the replay showed Ryan turning mining equipment into weapons and Katie using communication arrays as directed energy pulse generators. "Their resource management is completely irrational by our standards, but highly effective," Zethkar pointed out. "They achieved total victory with 0 casualties by embracing tactics that we would consider reckless or impossible." Admiral Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. "Zethkar, I want you to establish a special tactical study group. Include representatives from every major species. We need to understand if human military thinking can be adapted to our own forces." Sir, there is something else you should know, Zethkar said carefully. The humans have requested permission to attempt more advanced scenarios. Absolutely not. We cannot risk— Admiral, Zethkar interrupted, something he had never done before. They specifically asked about the Battle of the Nexus Gates. Admiral Kethavar's expression grew grave. The Battle of the Nexus Gates was the ultimate tactical simulation, based on the most catastrophic military defeat in galactic history. 5,000 years ago, a coalition fleet of over 10,000 ships had been completely destroyed while attempting to hold a critical hyperspace junction. The simulation was so complex and the odds so overwhelming that it was only used for advanced strategic planning exercises with senior commanders. They cannot be serious, the Admiral said finally. They are, sir. In fact, they seemed excited by the challenge. Meanwhile, in the Academy's tactical library, the three humans were doing exactly what everyone feared, studying the most impossible military scenarios they could find. The Battle of the Nexus Gates simulation was restricted to senior-level cadets, but Jake had convinced one of the librarian AIs to provide them with the basic parameters. 10,000 ships, Katie read from the tactical display. Defending a fixed position against an enemy force of over 50,000 vessels. The coalition held out for 6 hours before being completely annihilated. What was the strategic objective? Ryan asked, already thinking about potential weaknesses in the scenario design. Control of 7 hyperspace gates that connected the core worlds to the outer rim territories, Jake replied. If the defenders failed, the enemy could cut off trade and communication to half the galaxy, Ryan whistled softly. That's a lot bigger than one orbital platform. The scale is different, but the principle is the same, Katie pointed out. Overwhelming enemy force, limited defensive resources, impossible odds. Plus a fixed defensive position that can't retreat, Jake added thoughtfully. I'm starting to see possibilities. What the humans didn't know was that their conversation was being monitored by the Academy's security systems. Their request to access advanced scenarios had triggered automatic surveillance protocols. Every word they spoke was being recorded and analyzed by the Academy's tactical computers. The AIs that ran the Academy's simulation systems were among the most sophisticated in the galaxy. They had been programmed by the finest minds from 17 different species, incorporating thousands of years of military knowledge and strategic thinking. But as they analyzed the humans' previous victories, even these advanced computer systems began to reach disturbing conclusions. The humans had not won through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had won by refusing to accept the basics, assumptions that the simulations were built upon. Every scenario in the Academy's database was designed to test specific tactical principles: resource conservation, casualty minimization, strategic withdrawal, acceptable losses. The humans ignored all of these principles. The AIs began running probability analyses on other scenarios, testing what might happen if human-style tactics were applied. The results were alarming. In simulation after simulation, conventional forces were defeated by opponents who were willing to sacrifice their own equipment and positions for tactical advantage. Late that night, as the humans slept peacefully in their quarters, emergency meetings were being held across the galaxy. Military commanders who had never met in person were connecting through encrypted hyperspace communications, discussing a threat that none of them had anticipated. Humanity had joined the Galactic Alliance. As a minor species, barely worth noting among the ancient civilizations that dominated space. But in one afternoon, 3 young humans had demonstrated that every military doctrine in the galaxy might be fundamentally flawed. The question, Admiral Kethavar said to his assembled staff, is whether humanity represents an opportunity or a threat. Their tactics are undeniably effective, acknowledged General Tarseth of the Zenthari Empire. But they are also completely unpredictable. How do you plan a defensive strategy against an enemy that views their own destruction as an acceptable tactical option? More importantly, added strategist Prime Velnara from the Nethics Collective, how do we prevent other species from adopting these methods? If every military force begins treating their equipment as expendable ammunition, the galaxy will become a far more dangerous place. The meeting continued through the night, but no easy answers emerged. Humanity had opened a door that could not be closed, revealing tactical possibilities that challenged the very nature of civilized warfare. Back at Nexus Prime, Jake Martinez slept peacefully, unaware that his simple desire to solve military puzzles had triggered a crisis that would reshape galactic strategic thinking for generations to come. 3 days after their unprecedented victory in the siege of Korthak Prime, the humans received an unexpected summons. Commander Zethkar appeared at their quarters before dawn, his 4 arms moving with unusual urgency. "You are to report to the Grand Simulation Chamber immediately," he announced. "Admiral Kethvar himself is here to observe your next attempt." Jake sat up in his narrow bed, instantly alert. "What scenario are we running?" "The Battle of the Nexus Gates," Zethkar replied, and his voice carried a weight that made all 3 humans pay attention. "By direct order of the Galactic Military Council." Katie and Ryan exchanged glances. They had studied the basic parameters of the Nexus Gates scenario, but they had not expected to face it so soon. This was the ultimate test, the simulation that had broken the spirits of the galaxy's finest military minds. "Sir," Ryan said carefully, "isn't that scenario restricted to senior commanders?" "It was," Zethkar replied. "The restrictions have been lifted specifically for you 3. The Council wants to see if your methods can succeed against impossible odds on a galactic scale." The Grand Simulation Chamber was the largest facility at Nexus Prime, capable of modeling entire star systems and fleets of thousands of ships. When the humans arrived, they found it filled with observers. Admiral Kethavar stood at the center of the observation deck, his imposing figure surrounded by military representatives from every major species in the galaxy. "Cadets, Martinez, Bell, and Clark," the Admiral announced formally. "You stand before the assembled military leadership of the Galactic Alliance. Your recent victories have called into question fundamental principles of strategic doctrine. Today, we will determine whether your methods are truly revolutionary or merely effective. Against limited scenarios." Jake felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. In the observation area, he could see commanders and strategists who had shaped galactic military policy for centuries. The stakes of this simulation were far higher than he had realized. "The Battle of the Nexus Gates represents the greatest military disaster in recorded galactic history," Admiral Kethvar continued. "A coalition fleet of 10,000 ships was tasked with defending 7 hyperspace gates against an enemy force of over 50,000 vessels. The battle lasted 6 hours and resulted in the complete destruction of the defending fleet. The Grand Simulation Chamber activated, and holographic displays filled the space around them. The humans found themselves looking at a vast star system with 7 glowing hyperspace gates arranged in a defensive formation. Each gate was surrounded by massive space stations and defensive platforms. "Your objective is simple," the Admiral explained. "Prevent the enemy from capturing control of the hyperspace network. If they succeed, half the galaxy will be cut off from the core worlds. Failure means the collapse of galactic civilization as we know it." Katie studied the tactical display with growing awe. The scale was enormous, far beyond anything they had faced before. The defensive fleet consisted of 10,000 ships of various sizes, from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts. But the enemy force was 5 times larger, with vessels that outclassed anything in the defensive fleet. "Sir," Jake said respectfully, "what are the victory conditions? In the original battle, I assume total defeat was considered inevitable." Admiral Kethvar's expression was grim. "In the original battle, the defenders hoped to delay the enemy long enough for reinforcements to arrive. No reinforcements came. The victory condition for this simulation is simple: achieve any outcome other than total defeat." Ryan connected to the simulation's engineering systems and immediately felt overwhelmed. Instead of controlling one orbital platform, he now had access to hundreds of space stations, thousands of ships, and defensive installations scattered across an entire star system. "This is impossible," whispered Cadet Prime Zaranel from the observation area. "Even the humans cannot overcome odds of 50 to 1. "Perhaps," replied strategist Prime Velnara of the Nethics Collective, "but they have surprised us before." Jake took command of the Coalition fleet, feeling his consciousness expand to encompass the vast defensive network. Through the neural interface, he could sense every ship, every weapon system, every crew member under his command. The responsibility was staggering. "Enemy fleet detected at the edge of the system," Katie reported, her enhanced awareness reaching across space to track the approaching armada. "Estimated time to contact, 2 hours. "That's our advantage," Jake realized immediately. "Time and space. They have to cross an entire star system to reach the hyperspace gates." Ryan was already deep in the system's engineering networks, studying the infrastructure with growing excitement. "Jake, this isn't just a defensive scenario. This is an entire star system with manufacturing facilities, asteroid mining operations, and massive power generation systems." "What are you thinking?" Katie asked. "I'm thinking we don't have to fight their kind of battle," Ryan replied. "We have 2 hours to turn this entire star system into a weapon." In the observation area, Admiral Kethavar leaned forward. The humans were not positioning their fleet for defensive action as expected. Instead, they seemed to be studying the system's civilian infrastructure. "First priority," Jake announced to his simulated fleet commanders. "Evacuate all civilian populations to the core worlds through the hyperspace gates. I want every transport ship moving refugees immediately." "Sir," came a confused reply from one of the fleet captains. "That will leave our defensive positions undermanned." "That's the point," Jake said calmly. "Katie, I need you to coordinate with the mining operations. How much antimatter can we extract from the gas giant in the next 90 minutes? Katie's consciousness reached out to the system's industrial facilities. The automated mining platforms can extract approximately 50,000 tons of raw antimatter. But, sir, that much antimatter would be incredibly dangerous to store. "We're not going to store it," Jake replied. "Ryan, can you modify the hyperspace gates?" Ryan's awareness dove into the massive technological structures that made faster-than-light travel possible. The hyperspace gates were marvels of engineering, capable of opening artificial wormholes across vast distances. But as he studied their systems, he began to see possibilities that their designers had never intended. "I can overload the gate generators to create artificial gravity wells," he reported. "But it would permanently damage the gates." "Do it," Jake ordered. "All 7 gates. I want gravity distortions that will pull enemy ships out of hyperspace at random locations throughout the system." Admiral Kethvar stood up in alarm. They are planning to destroy the very installations they are supposed to protect. Wait, and see? Replied Commander Zethkar, who was beginning to understand the human approach. As the enemy fleet entered the outer system, they found chaos instead of organized resistance. The hyperspace gates were malfunctioning, creating gravitational anomalies that scattered enemy ships across millions of cubic kilometers. Ships that tried to maintain formation found themselves fighting unpredictable gravitational forces that pulled them off course. Enemy fleet disrupted, Katie reported. Their formation is completely broken. They're scattered across the entire outer system. Phase 2, Jake announced. Ryan, release the antimatter. Ryan had been modifying the system's cargo transport network while the enemy approached. Instead of using the antimatter for power generation, he had loaded it into automated freight containers and launched them on collision courses with enemy ships. 50,000 tons of antimatter contained in disposable cargo pods began detonating throughout the enemy fleet. Each explosion was equivalent to a small star going supernova. Enemy ships that survived the initial chaos found themselves facing a deadly field of antimatter mines scattered throughout the system. "This is madness," breathed General Tarseth of the Zenthari Empire. "They are using the system's own infrastructure as ammunition," but Jake was not finished. "Katie, activate the communication network." Katie had modified every communications satellite and relay station in the system to broadcast at maximum power simultaneously. The combined electromagnetic pulse was powerful, enough to disrupt enemy sensors and communication systems across the entire star system. Blinded and scattered, the enemy fleet struggled to regroup. But every time they tried to form up for an organized attack, the humans struck them with another impossible tactic. Manufacturing stations launched swarms of improvised missiles. Research facilities released clouds of experimental nanobots that ate through enemy hull plating. Even the system's weather control satellites were modified to create electromagnetic storms that interfered with enemy navigation. Enemy fleet strength reduced by 70%, Katie reported. Remaining ships are attempting to retreat. "Don't let them," Jake ordered. "Ryan, can you collapse the hyperspace gates completely?" Ryan hesitated. "Yes, but it would create massive gravitational distortions. The entire system might become uninhabitable." "Do it. Better an uninhabitable system than letting them escape to threaten other worlds." Ryan triggered the final collapse of all 7 hyperspace gates simultaneously. The effect was spectacular and terrifying. Artificial black holes formed at each gate location, creating gravitational shears that tore apart any remaining enemy ships. The retreating fleet was caught in the 6 months after the Battle of the Nexus Gates simulation. The Galactic Military Academy looked very different. New training programs had been established, advanced tactical courses had been completely rewritten, and every major species had sent their brightest officers to study what was now called human warfare doctrine. Jake Martinez stood in his new office overlooking the main training facilities. The simple cadet quarters were a distant memory now. As the newly appointed Director of Unconventional Tactics, he had been given responsibilities he had never imagined possible. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see mixed groups of alien and human cadets working together on simulation exercises. "Still feels strange, doesn't it?" Katie Bell asked as she entered the office. Her own promotion to Chief of Strategic Innovation had come with similar shock. 6 months ago, we were just exchange students trying to pass basic training. Ryan Clark looked up from the technical specifications he was reviewing. As the Academy's new Director of Systems Engineering, he was responsible for developing training. Simulations that could challenge students who had learned to think like humans. I'm still not sure we did the right thing. Look what we've started. Through the office windows, they could see the latest graduating class practicing new tactical exercises. A group of Zenthari cadets was learning to coordinate with human engineering specialists on creative resource utilization. Sethran students were working with human strategists to develop what the instructors called acceptable risk assessment. Even the proud Vraxians were studying human military history to understand asymmetric thinking patterns. Commander Zethkar entered the office, his 4 arms carrying data tablets containing the latest reports from across the galaxy. "The morning briefings," he announced, setting the tablets on Jake's desk. "And Admiral Kethvar wants to speak with you about the new training protocols." "How bad is it?" Jake asked, picking up the first tablet. "The Outer Rim Defense Force achieved a decisive victory against pirate raiders using modified asteroid mining equipment," Zethkar reported. "The Zenthari Third Fleet successfully defended the Kepler station by deliberately overloading their power grid to create an electromagnetic barrier. And yesterday, the Sethran border guard defeated a superior enemy force by turning their own supply depot into kinetic weapons." Katie winced. "Everyone's doing it now." "The tactical revolution you started has spread throughout the galaxy," Zethkar confirmed. "Military academies on 17 worlds are now teaching courses in human-style creative destruction. Some strategists are calling it the most significant change in warfare since the invention of energy weapons." Ryan set down his technical specifications. "Are we sure this is a good thing? We've basically taught the entire galaxy to be more dangerous." "Perhaps," Zethkar replied thoughtfully, "but you have also made them more effective. The Galactic Alliance has successfully resolved 3 major conflicts in the past 6 months, using strategies based on your methods. The galaxy is more dangerous, but it is also more protected." Jake activated the holographic display in his office, bringing up a star map that showed current military activities across known space. Green indicators marked successful applications of human tactical doctrine. Yellow showed ongoing training programs. Red indicated areas where the new methods had failed or caused unexpected problems. "Mostly green," Katie observed. "That's encouraging." "Look at the reports from the Proxima campaign," Ryan said, pointing to a cluster of green indicators near the galaxy's edge. "Admiral Velkara used human-style tactics to defeat a rebel fleet 3 times her size. She turned an entire asteroid field into a minefield by overloading mining charges. And here," Zethkar added, indicating another area, "the Centauri Defense Force ended a siege by convincing the attackers that their space station was rigged to explode. The enemy retreated rather than risk triggering a massive antimatter detonation." "Did they actually rig it to explode?" Katie asked. "Of course," Zethkar replied. "The human doctrine teaches that bluffs must be backed by genuine capability." Jake studied the reports more carefully. The tactical innovations were spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. Military commanders who had spent decades learning traditional warfare were embracing strategies that would have been considered insane just a year ago. "Sir," came a voice from the office communication system, "Admiral Kethvar is ready for the conference call." The holographic display changed to show the Admiral's command center, with representatives from military headquarters across the galaxy participating in the session. Admiral Kethvar looked older than he had 6 months ago, but his expression showed satisfaction rather than stress. "Director Martinez, Director Bell, Director Clark," he began formally, "I want to congratulate you on the success of the new training programs. The Academy has graduated more tactically innovative officers in the past 6 months than in the previous 50 years. Thank you, sir, Jake replied, though I'm not sure we deserve all the credit. The students are doing most of the innovating themselves now. That is exactly the point, the Admiral responded. You have not just taught new tactics. You have taught a new way of thinking about tactics. Our officers are now solving problems we never knew existed. A new voice joined the conversation as General Tarseth of the Zenthari Empire appeared in the holographic display. The Empire formally requests permission to send a second group of advanced officers to study at the Academy. Our recent victories, using human-inspired tactics, have impressed even our most traditional commanders. Granted, Admiral Kethvar replied immediately. We are also expanding the Academy's facilities to accommodate increased enrollment from all member species. Strategist Prime Velnara of the Nethics Collective materialized in the display next. The collective has completed its analysis of human warfare doctrine. We wish to propose a formal research partnership to develop defensive countermeasures. Katie raised an eyebrow. Countermeasures against our own tactics? Think of it as quality control, Velnara explained. If everyone in the galaxy learns to fight like humans, we need to understand how to defend against such tactics. The research would benefit everyone. Agreed, Admiral Kethvar said. The Academy will establish a joint research division to study both offensive and defensive applications of unconventional warfare. As the conference continued, Jake found his mind wandering to larger implications. When they had first arrived at Nexus Prime, humanity had been seen as a minor species, barely worth noting among the ancient galactic civilizations. Now, human tactical doctrine was being studied and implemented across thousands of worlds. There is one more matter, Admiral Kethvar announced, bringing Jake's attention back to the present. The Galactic Council has voted to offer Earth full membership in the Defense Alliance, with a permanent seat on the Strategic Planning Committee. Jake, Katie, and Ryan exchanged glances. This was far beyond anything they had expected when they first signed up for the exchange program. Sir, Jake said carefully, are you sure the galaxy is ready for more humans in positions of military authority? Admiral Kethvar smiled, an expression that was both amused and slightly worried. Director Martinez, 6 months ago I would have said absolutely not. Today I would say the galaxy cannot afford to not have humans in positions of military authority. After the conference ended, the 3 humans sat in Jake's office, looking out at the Academy's training facilities. The simulation chambers were working around the clock now, with students from across the galaxy learning to think in ways their species had never considered before. Do you think we did the right thing? Ryan asked quietly. Katie considered the question seriously. We solved problems that everyone said were impossible to solve. We've made the galaxy safer and given people new tools to protect themselves. We've also made warfare more unpredictable and dangerous, Jake pointed out. Every conflict now has the potential to escalate beyond anything we've seen before. Maybe that's not entirely bad, Ryan suggested. If everyone knows that any war could become catastrophically destructive, maybe there will be fewer wars. Commander Zethkar, who had been quietly reviewing reports, looked up at them. You are concerned about the consequences of your actions. Shouldn't we be? Jake asked. Perhaps, Zethkar replied. But consider this. For the past century, military doctrine was stagnant. The same tactics, the same strategies, the same predictable outcomes. Wars dragged on for years because everyone knew exactly what to expect from their enemies. He gestured toward the window, where alien and human cadets were working together on a tactical exercise. Now, conflicts are being resolved quickly and decisively. The unpredictability you worry about is forcing commanders to seek diplomatic solutions, rather than risk encounters with enemies who might destroy themselves to achieve victory. Katie nodded slowly. Mutually assured creativity instead of mutually assured destruction. An interesting way to put it, Zethkar agreed. Your species has given